Have you ever paused in the middle of your day to notice the steady stream of words passing through your mind? It's that never-ending murmur, as if you're carrying on an invisible conversation with yourself from dawn until you close your eyes at night. These inner monologues might seem trivial, just random mental noise. Yet throughout history, mystics, philosophers, and even modern psychologists have pointed to one consistent message. The dialogues you host within your own head can set the stage for everything you experience in the outer world. If you want to shape your life toward fulfillment, whether in relationships, finances, health, or peace of mind, the simplest yet most powerful starting point often lies in changing the way you talk to yourself. Of course, many people dismiss this idea. They think, talking to myself? Sure, but that's harmless. It's not like I'm proclaiming anything out loud. However, the repeated phrases you utter in your thoughts can have as much impact as words spoken to another person. In fact, these quiet statements might be even more potent because they slip in unchecked. Imagine you have an inner stage where you play out countless scenarios, arguments you never had, self-criticism you'd never voice openly, or daydreams you assume are too fantastic to be real. Over time, these seeds of inner speech begin to sprout. They color your emotional states, tilt your everyday decisions, and ultimately bloom into conditions that confirm what you've been mentally rehearsing. We can notice how this works in everyday scenarios. Suppose you regularly whisper to yourself that you're not good enough, or that opportunities always slip through your fingers. Even if you seem upbeat outwardly, that background commentary quietly undermines you. You might procrastinate or settle for less because, deep down, your mind is repeating a story of insufficiency. Meanwhile, people who maintain a strong, positive internal voice often find the world reflecting that energy back at them. They walk into new situations expecting an open door, and that expectancy shifts their posture and approach, leading to better outcomes. It's not about ignoring real obstacles, but about choosing an internal dialogue that fosters effective responses instead of defeat. Yet many wonder, if internal chatter is so crucial, why do we all do it so automatically, often in ways that undercut our own goals? The answer might lie in habit. We absorb patterns from family, friends, and a lifetime of experiences. Over years, these patterns solidify, becoming our normal viewpoint. Perhaps you grew up with subtle messages that you couldn't trust people. So your internal talk is peppered with suspicion, cynicism, or worry. Day after day, you attract scenarios reinforcing those beliefs. It's a loop. Your negative assumptions show up as negative outcomes, which confirm your assumptions. The only way to break the cycle is to become conscious of the talk track in your mind, then deliberately change its direction. Some people think that controlling internal conversation is a tedious or impossible task after all. How can you monitor something that goes on 24/7? But the process doesn't have to be overwhelming. The first step is simple awareness. Over the next few days, notice when you slip into mental complaints, repeated anxieties, or critical remarks about yourself or others. You might discover that you're replaying entire dialogues from the past, something an acquaintance said, a scenario at work, or perhaps a perceived slight from a friend. The key is not to judge yourself harshly for these mental replays. Instead, each time you catch one, gently replace it with words that align with the version of yourself and the reality you truly want to live. There's a classic insight from biblical or spiritual sources about putting off the old man and putting on the new man. Translated into everyday language, it means letting go of that old identity shaped by negative talk, then adopting a new identity consistent with your highest aims. People often read such phrases metaphorically, as if they're purely moral instructions about avoiding evil thoughts. But from a deeper perspective, it suggests that your world is literally formed by your internal conversations. If you keep recycling the same self-defeating statements, you remain bound to the old man, the outdated version of you. Whereas if you begin practicing an internal voice that radiates confidence, possibility, and love, you step into the new self. This transformation isn't magic or self-delusion. It's the natural outflow of changing your habitual mental environment. One might argue, but isn't that just positive thinking? What if my circumstances are genuinely dire? Indeed, external challenges are real, and you shouldn't simply pretend all is well if it's not. However, the point is that complaining mentally about dire circumstances rarely solves them. By adjusting your self-talk to one of constructive focus phrases like, "I'm discovering solutions," "I trust my resourcefulness," "I see openings where I used to see dead ends," you shift your emotional state and prime your creativity for problem solving. Over time, these changes can lead to real improvements. Negative self-talk, on the other hand, blinds you to opportunities. That's why controlling internal conversation is less about ignoring reality and more about meeting it from a stance of empowerment. Another angle to explore is how your internal voice shapes your relationships. If you're constantly grousing in your mind about how unkind or incompetent others are, you'll tend to behave in ways that either provoke those behaviors or interpret them negatively. Meanwhile, if you think in terms like, "I appreciate the good in people," "I notice their strengths," you start creating an atmosphere of respect that draws out better responses. This can happen even in small interactions, like standing in line at a store or exchanging messages online. Instead of letting old resentments or insecurities color your viewpoint, your new pattern of internal speech influences how you read tone, how you respond, and how others then respond to you. Now, you might wonder if it's enough to just speak differently in your head. Do you also need to incorporate emotion or visualization? Many traditions that teach the creative power of mind say emotion is the catalyst that cements words into tangible results. If you just blandly say, "Everything is working out for me," but inwardly feel cynical or disbelieving, the affirmation might bounce off. The trick is to pair the words with an emotional shift, a sense of relief, gratitude, or quiet confidence that your new statement is possible. That emotional resonance is like telling your subconscious, "I'm serious about this," which raises the odds of your mind latching onto that direction. Additionally, consider the importance of listening as well as speaking. Communication is a loop. When you mentally recite positive statements, do you also allow yourself to hear them as if someone else is speaking them to you? People with advanced visualization skills often do just that. They imagine hearing a voice, sometimes their own, sometimes a mentor figure affirming that they are safe, capable, or on the right track. Or they imagine a friend congratulating them on an accomplishment that, in everyday reality, hasn't happened yet. That fosters a sense of realism, making the mental conversation more dynamic. Instead of passively reading lines in your head, you're engaged in a back and forth of talk and response, like an actor rehearsing a role. The mind then encodes it as a plausible experience, nudging external conditions to match. You might also discover friction or resistance when you try to shift your inner talk. For instance, if you've spent years telling yourself, "I can never get a decent job," and now you attempt to say, "I'm attracting great professional opportunities," part of your mind rebels. Maybe it calls that new statement a lie. That's normal. It indicates your old identity is clashing with the new identity you're cultivating. Rather than giving up, you can treat that friction as a sign you're on the threshold of change. Keep at it, systematically countering each negative protest with your chosen empowering line. Over days or weeks, you'll feel the inner resistance easing, replaced by a genuine sense of possibility. Eventually, you might wake up one morning realizing you're no longer locked in that old script of self-doubt. Why does it matter so much? Because once your mind consistently runs on healthier, more purposeful talk, your behavior emotional atmosphere, and entire reality can pivot. Instead of unconsciously drifting from minor crisis to crisis, you consciously guide your destiny. It's not a guarantee of a trouble-free life, but it absolutely redefines how you handle challenges and how many open doors you notice. The weight of cynicism lifts, replaced by a clarity that seeks solutions or sees silver linings. Over time, people around you sense a shift and may respond more generously or collaborate more readily. You also sense an alignment with your goals, cutting out aimless or harmful actions. Through repeated practice, you realize your mental commentary has become an ally, whereas before it might have been an inner saboteur. Some might say, but I'd feel strange talking to myself as if I've already succeeded when I haven't. Keep in mind this approach has been taught in different forms for centuries. Ancient texts counsel imagining you already have your heart's desire, feeling it as real. The difference is you're not passively daydreaming. You're anchoring your mental environment in the conviction that your possibility can unfold. The discomfort arises because you're used to a more negative or neutral script. Give yourself permission to imagine better. Over time, it ceases feeling unnatural. Instead, it becomes second nature to chat with yourself in ways that affirm your capabilities. Nor is it about ignoring moral or ethical behavior. If you steer your self-talk toward altruism, empathy, and integrity, you reinforce the kind of person you want to be. Telling yourself, I deal with others fairly, or approach challenges with compassion, helps you act accordingly. This can lead to a cycle of positive feedback. Your words lead to better actions. Your better actions lead to kinder outcomes, and those outcomes feed back into your new sense of self. A useful exercise can be to rewrite your usual complaints or worries. If you tend to say, I never have enough time to do what I want, transform it internally into, I manage my schedule in a way that supports what matters to me. If you're prone to thoughts like, people are always disappointing me, shift to the people in my life show me generosity and respect. If your mind retorts, that's not true right now, gently remind yourself that you're choosing a new pattern. You're planting seeds for tomorrow, not describing the current state. The more consistent you stay, the more you'll find that tomorrow aligns with your new narrative. Also, it helps to note that not everything will shift overnight. Some old patterns run deep, especially if they're tied to long-standing traumas or limiting beliefs. But each small success, like a surprisingly positive conversation, or an opportunity that arises after you've changed your inner talk, cements your confidence in this method. Over months or years, the cumulative effect can be life-altering. You realize it's not about a single grand statement, but an ongoing habit of constructive, future-oriented speech. Additionally, keep an eye out for how you talk to yourself about others. If you hold grudges or mutter criticisms in your mind, you might inadvertently keep attracting negativity in those relationships. Try reframing. If someone's challenging, imagine a scenario where you're both cooperating or at peace. This doesn't guarantee they'll change, but it transforms your emotional posture, and sometimes that is enough to shift the dynamic. At minimum, it saves you from sinking into bitterness or frustration. At maximum, it catalyzes surprising improvements in how they behave toward you. Does this approach clash with realism? You might wonder if it's just self-deception. But realism often amounts to repeating the same negative commentary we've internalized. Realism says, well, if I look at my track record, I never succeed, then we keep recreating the track record by perpetuating the same mental lines. By contrast, shaping a new narrative is not about denial of facts. It's about opening a door to different outcomes that could be just as real if given the chance. In a sense, you're selecting from the vast potential future scenarios the ones that resonate with your desired self. Over time, this selection principle becomes habit, and your new future starts to look more and more like you intended. Finally, Consider how you'd like to look back on your life a few years from now. Would you prefer to say, "Yes, I recognized how powerful my self-talk was, and I seized the chance to direct it toward my goals," or "I allowed the same complaints and doubts to run my mind year after year"? The difference can be enormous. Indeed, you'll likely face challenges either way. No mental approach erases all adversity. But with positive, focused internal talk, you become more resourceful, less easily shaken, and more aligned with states of joy and accomplishment. So, if you talk to yourself in a way that aligns with your dreams, affirming them as real, breathing emotional conviction into them, you set a course that can bring virtually anything you want within reach. It might feel awkward at first, especially if your old script was heavy on complaining or fear. Yet each day, you maintain your new talk. You reinforce an internal climate where success, love, creative insight, and well-being can flourish. This transforms you into someone who not only believes that their goals are possible, but acts, speaks, and carries themselves as if they've already tapped into those possibilities. The outer world, ever an echo of our inner states, begins mirroring that shift. Over time, you wake up to the astonishing reality that so many of your hopes have come to fruition, not through mere luck, but because you took responsibility for your own mental conversations. In short, rewriting your inner dialogue is among the most impactful moves you can make. If you talk to yourself with confidence, vision, and kindness, you'll find the seeds of everything you want. You'll no longer be half knowingly sabotaging your aims with negative chatter. Instead, you'll harness the creative power of imagination and language, forming a mental environment ripe for positive manifestation. Whether you're craving career breakthroughs, deeper relationships, better health, or spiritual growth, the key often lies in how you speak inwardly when no one else is listening. By mastering that silent voice, you transform not only your perspective, but also the unfolding circumstances of your life. And that, in essence, is how you have everything you want, one deliberate, life-affirming conversation at a time.